What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tuesday, May 6th edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. 11 MLB games today. It was 12. We lost Coors Field about a half hour ago. That's why I started the show later than I was planning on. Wanted to get everything rerun without Coors. Obviously, that impacts the slate quite a bit, not having that game to get to. So we have 11 games now. Weather looks mostly okay. There are a couple of spots that are potentially dicey, but everything as of right now looks pretty good. So keep an eye on weather up to lock, obviously. But Coors was the big game that had the potential to really be a pain in the ass for this slate. So it's nice that they just got rid of that one. Plenty of good pitching today, plenty of interesting stacks to get to, some good hitters parks. Should be pretty interesting to walk through. Going to take a look at my player exposures as they stand right now, as usual, going game by game, using the Run the Sims projections that you see on the screen. A couple of quick housekeeping things before I get into it. For one, as you can see running across the bottom of the screen, you can use the promo code UTA MLB and get 10% off any of our MLB projections packages at runthesims.com. These are the projections that those of us at Endgame developed and put together, basically with the goal to take stuff out of Yuta's head and put them into a model. Everything that Yuta thinks is important is in there. He's still tweaking some stuff on the back end, get everything exactly how he wants it. And also, as you can see on the screen, there is a notes section as well. So if there's anything that stands out as particularly noteworthy for Yuta or for myself, we post in there also. In addition to the projections that you see on the screen, you also, if you sign up for the full MLB projections package, you do get access to the browser extension as well that comes with the Draft Caddy and overlays the projections onto your DraftKings screen. We will shortly have this for Underdog as well. That's coming in the near future. If you are somebody that doesn't play enough volume that the full projections package makes a lot of sense for you, maybe you only play a couple of lineups a night, you can subscribe to the browser extension separately. Only $10 a month. You get the overlay on the screen. Good for hand building lineups, good for late swapping lineups throughout the night. If you have a couple of lineups that you want to make tweaks to, but you don't want to run, a full late swap through Sims and all of that, makes it very easy. So that is available as a standalone or is included in the full MLB package. So you can sign up for either of those, use promo code UTA MLB. And then also, in case anybody missed it, I am writing articles again. Today was the first day I put out the deep dive article. That is up on the Run the Sims site. I sent it out this afternoon. I plan on writing it all weekday slates, but obviously things are going to happen. So I'll say most weekday slates or weekday main slates. I will have that article up. Keep an eye out for that with my early thoughts on the slate. And then obviously this show will be reinforcement of a lot of things that I said or potentially things that change that I notice once I've run some lineups, once we have more up-to-date ownership, etc. So keep an eye out for that article. I am writing that again. Now getting into it with the Padres taking on the Yankees in New York. Michael King going for the Padres, Clark Schmidt going for the Yankees. And this does look a little bit different to me than it did this morning. One thing that I was expecting, one that I certainly was not. Michael King coming in at $9,500, getting projected for about 14% ownership. I'm around 2x the field on him, getting to about 30%. That part I'm not surprised by. He is our third highest projected pitcher here. There is a lot of volatility here. We just talked about this with Nick Pivetta yesterday. I think it's pretty similar. Obviously, Pivetta did not come through, and then that was compounded by the fact that Cole Reagans had a ceiling game in his 5 innings at the same price. But here you have Michael King, who has been very, very good as a starting pitcher. Going back to last season, a 28% strikeout percentage. So far this year, his stuff has looked even better. Stuff Plus has jumped from 95.9 last year to 101.7 so far this year. His strikeout percentage has gone from 27.5% up to 29.5%. So you have a very good strikeout pitcher here in King. The downside, the risk, is that he is facing the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. Now, the park itself is not that big of an issue given how Petco Park has played over the last couple of years since they made some changes to the design I don't remember what they changed, something beyond the outfield that I think affected wind currents or something. But either way, Petco has been a very good home run park over the last couple of seasons. So it's not that you're getting a huge park difference, but obviously facing the Yankees in Yankee Stadium is a very dangerous spot to be. But the upside here is that this is a team that has strikeouts in their lineup, particularly at the top part of the lineup, the guys that you are most likely to face 3 times. Trent Grisham, Ben Rice, Aaron Judge, obviously a fantastic hitter, but Aaron Judge, Dominguez, Volpe. The only guy in the top 6 that doesn't, going back to last season, hasn't struck out at least 23.5% of the time against right-handed pitching is Cody Bellinger batting cleanup. Grisham, Rice, Judge, Dominguez, Volpe all have average or higher strikeout percentages against right-handed pitching. So there is plenty of strikeout upside here. Obviously, there is also plenty of getting blown up by the Yankees upside or downside rather, but King has been good at limiting power as well. So that's something that stands out. That is a difference between him and Pivetta. Not that Pivetta even got beat by home runs really last night. He just got beat by not throwing strikes, mostly not being efficient. But King has allowed only 0.86 or 0.82 rather home runs per 9 innings over the last couple of seasons as well. So there is that. If you're somebody that wants to buy into revenge narratives, there's that working in his favor, I guess, as well. But only a 124 expected ISO with a 31% K percentage against righties since last year, 137 expected ISO with about a 25.5% K percentage against lefties. So King, happy to get to in tournaments. The one that surprised me here is that I am getting to some Clark Schmidt. He is cheap at 6,900, so I do understand that. He's getting about 6% ownership. You can see on the screen that from a point per dollar standpoint, he does project reasonably well here. And I do think it's just the salary that is driving things because this is a very unappealing strikeout spot. In addition to that, Jackson Merrill is expected back today for the Padres, so that makes this lineup better, makes it deeper. But in their projected lineup, we don't have a confirmed lineup yet, I assume because they are waiting to officially activate Merrill, is my guess. But in their projected lineup of Tatis, Arise, Machado, Merrill, Bogart, Sheets, Iglesias, Hayward, Diaz, at least the projected lineup I'm looking at, the highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching in that lineup is Gavin Sheets at 21.5%. So it is a brutal strikeout spot for Clark Schmidt. In addition to, they have obviously some good hitters in this lineup as well with Tatis, Machado, Merrill, Bogarts, Arise, not from a power standpoint, but just from a overall production standpoint, and basically impossible to strike out. So really, really tough strikeout spot for Schmidt, but I am getting to some, again, getting to about 12%. I think just because of the fact that he is cheap, there's not a clear, really good pay down SP2 on this slate. You have a few guys that you could make the case for, but Schmidt is showing up for me a little bit, which, again, is a bit of a surprise. Offensively, not getting to much of the Padres here. You always can make the case for good hitters in Yankee Stadium. I'm right around the field, basically identical to the field on Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Jackson Merrill, getting like 3 to 5%. Nothing that really stands out on the Padres side. On the Yankee side, Aaron Judge getting the most ownership at 5%. Everybody else 3% or less. I'm not getting really anything here. Clearly, if you want to get to some Aaron Judge, that's fine. I don't care who he's facing. He's never going to be a bad play, especially given, what we've seen from Aaron Judge so far this year in terms of his actual production, having arguably the best start to a season anybody has ever had. So goes without saying, but this is still an 11-game slate. You have unlimited good outfield options, both in his price range and in others. So yeah, if you want to play 5 to 10% owned Aaron Judge, be my guest, but also doesn't stand out like he does on some other slates. Phillies taking on the Rays in Tampa Bay. About a 4.5 implied run total for the Phillies. Just shy of a 4 implied run total for the Rays. Zach Wheeler on the mound for the Phillies. Drew Rasmussen going for the Rays. Zach Wheeler is our second highest projected pitcher at $9,700. Projected for about 19 and change in fantasy points. We have him projected, I believe, to go... Yeah, we have him projected for the most outs here, the most total batters faced, slight edge against Sale and Lugo. Zach Wheeler, generally efficient, works pretty deep into games. The only negative here is that this park is favorable for offense from everything that we can tell so far. Obviously, this is the first year that Tampa Bay has played there, but certainly looks like a good spot for offense. But Zach Wheeler, very good pitcher overall. The closest thing to a weakness that he has is that he will give up some power to left-handed hitters. 167 expected ISO to lefties since the start of last year. 27% K percentage in that split. 32% K percentage against righties with a sub 100 expected ISO. So that's the closest thing to a weakness he has. But overall, very, very good. 29% strikeout percentage since the start of last season. So far this season, that strikeout percentage has actually increased a bit. 32.8% K percentage so far. Fastball velo is about the same as last year. Stuff plus grade is about the same as last year. Good strikeout matchup here against Tampa Bay as well. So far this season against right-handed pitching, they have a 23.5% K percentage, which is the third highest in baseball, trailing only the Rockies and the Angels. So I like Zach Wheeler. I like the spot for him. He's getting 24% ownership. I'm getting 39%. Drew Rasmussen on the other side, $8,300. 7% projected ownership. I'm not getting to him here against the Phillies. I think he's okay. Like, it's not a spot where I don't understand why he's getting 7% ownership. He's a good pitcher overall, but this is a tough matchup for him. One thing working in his favor is that he is very, very good at limiting power. Sub 100 expected ISO against lefties since the start of last season with a 33% strikeout percentage. Sub 100 expected ISO against righties with a 21.5% strikeout percentage. Limited sample there. If you go back to 2023, sample size gets a little bit bigger. 25% K percentage to righties, 30% to lefties. Still sub 100 expected ISO to both sides of the plate. So pretty good strikeout pitcher, very good at limiting power, dangerous matchup, dangerous park, but he is good. I just have some other pitchers that I am prioritizing over him, but he is a good pitcher. Offensively, not getting to much of this game at all. My highest owned hitter in the entire game is Jonathan Aranda at 3%. Jonathan Aranda has been fantastic this year. He does hit left-handed, which again, if you're going to talk about weaknesses for Zach Wheeler, it's the closest thing he has to one. But 4,200, first base only. There's plenty of other options at that position before you start targeting Zach Wheeler on an 11-game slate. Brandon Lau, 3,900, hitting second at second base, 3% of my lineups, 5% for the field. Those would be the two guys from Tampa Bay that I want the most based on the matchup, but clearly no priorities here. And then similarly on the other side, Bryce Harper, Bryson Stott, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, all getting like 4 to 6% ownership for the Phillies. I'm getting even a little bit less than that, but it's basically the same thing as Aaron Judge. Not to say they're as good as Aaron Judge, but basically the same thing where, if you're getting that kind of talent at 5%, give or take, you're never going to be wrong for going to them in large field tournaments, but there are certainly better matchups to target. The ballpark itself is good, but as I mentioned, Rasmussen, very, very good at limiting power. Cincinnati taking on Atlanta. In Atlanta, Chris Sale is on the mound for the Braves. Andrew Abbott is going for the Reds. Chris Sale is inexplicably $8,800 on DraftKings. He is the highest projected pitcher on the slate. I have no idea how he is only $8,800, but I am getting to a lot of him. My SaberSim screen is frozen at the moment. For some reason, it always happens right around this time. But I am getting to a ton of Chris Sale, as I would expect. So is the field, but I'm getting more. Right now, about 35 to 40% ownership projected coming into Chris Sale. He would be in 80% of my lineups if the slate started right now. He is just completely mispriced here and looks really, really good. When you look at the other, elite strikeout pitchers on this slate, you have Paul Skeens, who has some question marks that I'll get to when I get to that game. But he is much more expensive. Zach Wheeler, much more expensive. Even Michael King against the Yankees is more expensive than Chris Sale here against the Reds. So I'm very happy to just take the savings, get to Chris Sale, 21.5% K percentage on the Reds active roster against left-handed pitching over the last couple of seasons. You get Ellie De La Cruz from his weaker side of the plate. The only real negative I think that I could point to here for Sale is that he's not very good at preventing stolen bases. And the Reds do have plenty of guys that will steal if they get on. If they get on, obviously being the very big question mark there. But he does run the risk of, if he just gets like unlucky on a single or two to a lot of guys in this Reds lineup, that can easily turn into basically a double or a triple because of them running on him. And then, you give up a fly ball or whatever, and you give up an earned run. But he's just cheap enough that I really don't care. I think he looks very, very good. Andrew Abbott on the other side, I don't have interest in at 8,400. Tough matchup for him against the Braves, and kind of just reinforces this egregious Chris Sale salary. Andrew Abbott against the Braves is $400 less than Chris Sale against the Reds. Drew Rasmussen against Philadelphia is $500 less than Chris Sale against the Reds. It's just a complete mispricing. Steven asked about Chris Sale's stuff plus compared to last year. It's actually better. 104.2 stuff plus grade last season, 105.8 so far this season. Strikeout percentage this season, 29.3% compared to 32.1% last year. Fastball velo, 94.3 miles an hour down from 94.8, but nothing, drastic there as far as the drop off in velo. Still throwing basically, 94 to 95 miles an hour. Stuff plus is slightly up. Everything just looks very, very good. Jorge said Sale's salary might be tied to his offer performance so far this season. I didn't even know he had pitched poorly. Like, everything that I care about looks good. So, didn't know he had pitched poorly if he has. Haven't looked at actual results for him, but strikeout numbers are there. Stuff looks good. I don't see any problems with Chris Sale in this spot. Offensively, not going to be interested in getting to the Reds, obviously, given that Sale is in 80% of my lineups. It would be pretty hard to get there. But, I mean, he's 4.8 ERA is high, obviously. He's had one big fantasy game, and that was at Colorado last start. But yeah, I mean, I don't see anything that I would really care about. He has also had some tough matchups, so that's something to keep in mind. When you're looking at early season numbers, San Diego in his first start of the season, very tough strikeout matchup. Dodgers in his second start, Phillies in his third start. Then he got Tampa Bay in Minnesota. Then he gets Arizona. Then he gets the Rockies in Colorado. Rockies obviously easy. Park itself is not, but hasn't had great strikeout matchups either for the most part. So I don't see anything that would be wrong with Chris Sale. To your point, like, that probably is why he's 8,800. If you just say he has a 4.8 ERA, so he's 8,800, sure, but that's a pretty stupid way to do pricing. So either way, tons of Chris Sale, not getting to the Reds, obviously. Atlanta, I think, is in a pretty solid spot here. I am getting to two of them in particular, though, Austin Riley and Ozzie Albies. 14% Riley for me, 11% Albies. Relatively weak positions for them. The two highest projected hitters on Atlanta. We actually have the highest home run projection on the entire slate for Austin Riley here, so that stands out. And third base, there are some good hitters, but not the deepest position. So I do really like getting to him. He's getting 11% ownership. Albie's getting 8%. I'm a little bit north of the field there as well. Since last season, Abbott has allowed a 184 expected ISO to righties, 220 actual ISO. So Riley looks good. Albies looks good. If you can get to some Ozuna, some Sean Murphy, I think those guys are fine as well. I am about 2x the field on Murphy. He's getting 3 to 4% ownership. I have about 6% at 4,600 batting sixth. So he is relatively expensive, but you do have power there. There are a lot of good power bats in this Braves lineup, obviously. But against left-handed pitching in particular, since the start of 2023, Austin Riley, 294 expected ISO. Marcell Ozuna, 253. Ozzie Albies, 184. Murphy, 293. Even Matt Olson from the left side, 225. Abbott is much, much better at limiting left-handed power than right-handed power. But I think if you're stacking the Braves, throwing Olson in there is certainly fine. But individually, really like Austin Riley. And then I like Ozzie Albies and Sean Murphy a bit as well. Ozuna clearly good too, but you just run into the issue of there being so many good outfield plays, whereas third base, second base, catcher have a bit less opportunity cost. San Francisco taking on the Cubs in Chicago. Weather doesn't really look like we have anything super notable here. Wind isn't blowing hard. It's not hot. It's not freezing. It's just kind of a pretty neutral spot, I think. Colin Ray is getting some ownership, getting about 10%. I'm not getting to him. Justin Verlander's getting 5%. I'm not getting to him either. If you wanted to go to some Colin Ray and say basically like he's your Clark Schmidt and you prefer him over Clark Schmidt, fine. I don't care. Certainly a better strikeout matchup against the Giants than against the Padres. It would be pretty hard to be worse than the Padres. The Giants rank 9th in strikeout percentage so far against right-handed pitching this year at 22.5%. So if you tell me that's what you want to do, fine. But for me, I'm not getting to him. Verlander on the other side, everything for him grades out a little bit better so far this season than last season. Stuff plus is up about 1.5 points from 106.3 to 107.8. K percentage is up about 1.5% from 18.7 to 20.4. Velo is up nearly a mile per hour from 93.5 to 94.3. He is pretty cheap, but you have 22 total pitchers on this slate. I don't really need the one that is facing the Cubs. Obviously, I kind of took that approach with Freddie Peralta the other day, not to say that he's as good or that he's the same as Verlander. He's obviously better, but it didn't work out. But in general, I'm fine with like just not taking a lot of pitching against the Cubs here. Very, very good Cubs offense. I can just find other pitchers that I want to get to. Overall, against right-handed pitching this year, the Cubs are 15th in strikeout percentage. They have a 121 WRC plus. Very, very tough spot for Verlander. Easier spot, like I said, for Colin Rea, but not a particularly good pitcher. 20% strikeout percentage, 4.3 xFIP, 1.6 home runs allowed per 9 innings since the start of last season. So again, if you want to go to either of them as a secondary option, I think it's fine. Like, there's no great mid-range plays outside of, I guess, Chris Sale technically, but they're not the ones that I prefer, at least right now. Offensively, I was getting to some Giants this morning when I wrote my article. I'm not getting to them much now at all. Sub 5% ownership across the board. Willy Adames, the only guy that right now would be in any of my lineups. If you wanted to make a case for the Giants, it is that they are getting outside of San Francisco, which is always nice. Colin Rea has allowed a 192 expected ISO to lefties since last year, 162 to righties. So like I said, he does give up some power, but they just don't really look like priorities here. The price tag on Adames is pretty cheap at $3,900, but there are some other good shortstop plays as well. One thing that I will mention as far as pinch hitting for the Giants, we know this is a team that does like to pinch hit quite a bit. But if you're using our projections, you can actually see relatively low pinch hit percentages here for most of the Giants lineup, Brett Wisely excluded. Lamont Wade's at 14%, which isn't nothing, but it's not as high as it could be. There are a couple of notable things here as far as pinch hitting goes. The Cubs do have 2 left-handed relievers in their bullpen. So that is a negative as far as they're able to match up relatively easily. But the way that the Giants lineup is set up, it's kind of difficult to match up because you have Yastrzemski, but then he's followed by Adames, who then is followed by Lee. So you do actually have 2 lefties in the top 3 there. You could bring a lefty in for Yastrzemski, suck it up and face Adames, and then you have him face Lee. But Yastrzemski, not super likely to get pinch hit for anyway. The guy that would get pinch hit for the most often is Lamont Wade, but there's 2 things here. One, Wilmer Flores is already in the lineup. And then 2, Lamont Wade is just sandwiched between right-handed bats. Chapman and Flores before him, Ramos and Bailey after him. So if you bring a lefty in for Wade and you don't get Wade out, or there's less than 2 outs, you're forced to then face Ramos and Bailey. So it does become a little bit more difficult for the Cubs to match up with Lamont Wade. So that's a lot of words for a team that I'm not getting to. But if you were interested in the Giants, that is something that mitigates pinch hit risk a little bit for their usual platoon guys. On the Cubs side, going up against Verlander, unfortunately, I'm not getting much of them either. Fields, 5% or less on pretty much everybody. One thing to note on Verlander, he has been reverse splits as far as power numbers go the last couple of seasons. 142 expected ISO allowed to lefties, 178 to righties. Seiya Suzuki has been fantastic so far this year for the Cubs, so there is plenty of power upside for him. But again, he's a $5,700 outfielder. It's just going to be really difficult to say I love any particular outfielder on this slate because there are so many good ones. There is plenty of power upside for any of Tucker, Crow, Armstrong, Suzuki, Happ. But that is one other kind of negative to stacking the Cubs too, is that most of the guys you want to get to play the outfield. And the outfield is the most appealing spot to be getting one-offs or mini stacks from other teams. Like, you're just going to get a little bit more upside naturally going to teams that have good catchers, second baseman, third baseman, shortstops, because then you get to just grab the highest projected players and round out your lineup at first base, outfield, etc. So that is a slight negative from a roster construction standpoint for the Cubs, in addition to 4 of their top 6 hitters being outfielders. So on DraftKings, you can only play 3 guys. You can only play 3 of those guys. So there are a couple things in addition to expensive salaries working against the Cubs. But if you find a way to make it work, the ceiling obviously is still very high. Very good offense. White Sox taking on the Royals in Kansas City. Seth Lugo going for the Royals. Sean Burke is going for the White Sox. No ownership coming into Burke, as you would expect. Tough strikeout spot, tough strikeout park, etc. Seth Lugo is getting 13% ownership at 8,700. I'm not getting much at all. I don't fault anybody for getting there. I think obviously it's a good spot against the White Sox. I don't even have to say I think. Everybody agrees. They have the 7th highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year. They have an 80 WRC plus. Seth Lugo is a good pitcher overall. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts is the problem. 21.5% strikeout percentage, 3.86 xFIP, doesn't walk a lot of guys, doesn't give up a lot of power. You are banking on him to work pretty deep into this game. And as I mentioned before, we do have him with the 2nd highest outs projection behind Zach Wheeler. So I think he's fine. Like, he's a solid enough play, but generally for me, when you start getting Seth Lugo in this like 8,500 to 9K price range, I just end up playing other options because, for example, I think Chris Sale clearly has a higher ceiling at basically the same price tag. I'm going to want to be getting to Zach Wheeler or Skeens or these other pay up options. I want to get to Michael King, like I'd said before. So I have these pitchers that just have a much higher strikeout percentage that I can get to. And then if I do need to, save money, I'm just going cheaper at SP2. So that's kind of what's forcing Lugo out for me. But if you took a different roster construction, maybe you're willing to give up some Zach Wheeler, maybe you don't like Michael King as much as I do, and you want to play some more Seth Lugo, that is certainly fine. He's facing the White Sox. He's a good pitcher. Goes without saying. But for me personally, I'm not getting much right now. Offensively, I'm not getting as much of the Royals as I thought that I would be, but I get it because they are getting a pretty decent amount of ownership on an 11-game slate. They have like a 5 to 5.5 implied run total here against Burke. They clearly have good hitters, and they are pretty cheap. So all of that is why you're seeing ownership come in here. Outside of Bobby Witt, this offense is basically free. So you have the ability to stack Kansas City, get whatever mini stacks or one-offs with them, get whatever pitching you want with them. 14% ownership coming into Bobby Witt, 13% to Pasquantino at 3,400, 12% to India at 3,100, 10 and 11% respectively to Garcia at 3,900 and Perez at 3,800. And then everybody else is 5% or less. Just kind of rounding things out for KC, but they are popular. They do project well. I think that if you can make lineups that make sense with them, it's fine. It's kind of like the offensive version, I guess, of Seth Lugo. If you need Kansas City to win tonight, nobody's going to look and say like, damn, I can't believe people played Kansas City. What were they thinking? Like, it's obviously a good spot, but I'm just not getting to a ton of them. I am going to some other spots. Vinny Pasquantino in particular, kind of a catch-22 right now. Like, he has been awful so far this season, 64 WRC plus. But on the other hand, that has driven his salary down to 3,400. He most likely is going to finish the season as a well above average hitter. That's who he is. But then on the other side, he's 3,400, so everybody's playing him. So what you have right now is 10 to 15% ownership coming into a dude with a 64 WRC plus this season. Again, he probably figures it out between now and the end of the season, but that doesn't mean it starts today. So it just becomes one of those tricky situations where the salary is adjusted, which is really nice, but then the ownership comes with it. So I'm not getting to a ton of them right here. Wouldn't be mad if I got more, but as is right now, not much KC for me, even less Chicago going against Lugo. Astros are taking on the Brewers in Milwaukee. Almost said Colin Rea for the Brewers, but it is not. Hayden Wesneski going for the Astros. Chad Patrick going for the Brewers. This is one change from my article earlier as well. Ownership projections have, as I expected, come down on Wesneski. He was getting like 20% when I wrote the article this morning, and I said that made no sense. He's down to 8%. I'm still not getting to him at 7,200, but I would throw him in that Colin Rea bucket of, if you want to play him as an SP2, I think it's fine. Honestly, I would kind of rather have him than Clark Schmidt, I think, but he is a few $100s more expensive. I do think he's a solid pitcher overall. Not a great strikeout pitcher by any stretch, but not bad either. 22% strikeout percentage since the start of last season, 3.84 xFIP. Has had some home run issues, 1.5 home runs allowed per 9. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. This is a tough strikeout spot against the Brewers, though. They, so far this season, have the 5th lowest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching at 18.5%. So I think Wesneski's fine. Don't love the strikeout spot. But again, I don't love the strikeout spot. I actively hate the strikeout spot for Clark Schmidt. I don't love the strikeout spot, or I don't love the pitcher for Colin Rea at this price tag. There's no perfect answer here, I don't think. Einsteinium said Wesneski's the cheap pitcher to play. I don't have any problem with that. Usually I hate whatever cheap pitcher you like. If I get some more Wesneski, great. If I don't, I'm fine with that too. But right now, I don't have him. Chad Patrick on the other side getting 5% ownership at 7,400. I don't have him either. Again, tough strikeout spot against the Astros. Offensively, I am getting to some of this game. Finally have an offense that I am playing. I was starting to wonder if I had any of those. But I am getting to the Astros here against Patrick, and I do like it. We've seen some reverse splits from him, albeit in a limited sample. The Astros really don't have any semblance of left-handed power with no Yordan Alvarez. The only left-handed hitter in the lineup today is Victor Caratini, but even though Patrick is right-handed, that doesn't matter too much. At least it hasn't so far. Going back to his entire time in the major leagues, which is this season. 302 pitches thrown to righties, 229 to lefties. He's allowed a 216 expected ISO, a 212 actual ISO to righties, sub 100 expected and actual ISOs to lefties. Obviously, very small sample, but it is worth noting that he has a cutter. He's thrown 44% of the time to lefties, 48% to righties. That is a pitch that not always, but in general, does tend to play better against opposite-handed hitters. So it's not completely surprising that he has had a little bit more, or that he has had more success against lefties as far as limiting power goes. It's a pitch that you can just run in on the hands of opposite-handed hitters. Looks like a four-seam fastball and then just saws you off. Whereas against righties, it's running to the barrel of your bat. So you do frequently see reverse splits for pitchers that rely heavily on cutters. And you don't have the best power hitters in this Houston lineup, but you do have a couple that look, or one in particular looks very good. I really like Christian Walker here. He's getting 4% ownership. I'm getting to about 13%. $3,900 price tag at first base, batting cleanup. I like that a lot. Jeremy Pena, 5% ownership, 4,100 leading off. Not a ton of power, but does have the ability to do some damage. Projects as a pretty good value. I'm getting to 16% of him. I'm getting to 10% Isaac Paredes, 9% Yainer Diaz, who's only 3,400 at catcher. So I do really like getting to these right-handed bats that are at the top and in the middle of the Astros lineup. I have 6% Altuve. He's tougher to get to, 5,100 outfield only, but still over the field on him. I like the Astros as a contrarian stack here. Milwaukee is a top 10 home run park over the last few seasons. It plays well for right-handed and for left-handed home runs. So I do like this spot. I like the lack of ownership coming into Houston. I like that outside of Altuve, they're very cheap. So just like I was saying with Kansas City, I think you can kind of do the same thing with Houston. Their implied run total is not as high as Kansas City. Kansas City's more likely to succeed, but you can build a similarly constructed lineup, I think, for the most part with Houston as you can with KC. You know, you go to, say, Pena, Walker, Diaz, Paredes, and then any other bat from Houston. If you have the salary, you go to Altuve. If you don't, you go down to like DeCenzo or something like that. Or not DeCenzo because he's not in the lineup, but Jake Myers batting 6th, Brendan Rodgers batting 8th, Cam Smith batting 9th, whatever. You go down to one of those guys if you need to save the salary, and you have all the money in the world to get, a two-man high upside outfield stack or something like that. And then also, you have a good shortstop here in Pena. You have a good catcher here in Diaz. You can cover third base with Paredes. Christian Walker at first base, there is opportunity cost, but he's cheap. So this is the opposite of what I was talking about with the Cubs, where your stack is covering a lot of the least appealing positions, and then you're just able to load up around them. So I do like the Astros for a lot of reasons here. Milwaukee on the other side, screen freezing up again. Don't like the spot as much against Wesneski as I do against Patrick, just because he is generally better at limiting power. And I'm not getting to too much of the Brewers here. Bryce Turang will be my highest owned guy at 4%. Christian Yelich is the field's highest owned guy at 4%. Everybody on the Brewers projected for 4% ownership or less. And I am also getting to 4% or less, everybody on Milwaukee. But I do like the home run upside here for the Astros. And I really like the lack of ownership coming into them, especially when you factor in how inexpensive they are. Moving on to the Orioles and the Twins. Pablo Lopez on the mound for the Twins. Cade Povich, revenge spot, going up against his former organization. Never pitched for the Twins, but was in their minor league system and traded for Jorge Lopez. He's getting the start. He is 5K flat, so obligatory rant about how no major league fully stretched out starting pitcher should ever be $5,000. This has changed from this morning as well. I'm not super surprised. I was relieved this morning when I was not getting to 5K Cade Povich because I normally would at 5K, but I am getting some now. He's 3% owned. I'm getting to about 11%. I don't have a ton of confidence here, but he's not a horrible pitcher. Like, he's not a 5K pitcher. He should be 6K. He should be 6,500. He has a 19% strikeout percentage, 4.86 xFIP, 1.5 home runs allowed per 9 since debuting last season. Obviously, those numbers are not very good, but they're not very different from Colin Rea either. Like, Rea's walk percentage is lower. He's given up a little bit more power. His xFIP is a little bit, about a half run lower. I'm not saying that they're as good as Colin Rea, but they're not $2,400 worse. So I really don't mind just hoping for the best here. It is a park upgrade in terms of power for Povich as well. Again, not a ton of confidence there, but I don't think that for the most part, you can have a lot of confidence in a lot of pitching today outside of the top end guys. So I'm fine with just kind of punting it and saying, all right, whatever, I'm going to play 5K Povich. Pablo Lopez on the other side, dangerous matchup for him. This Orioles lineup still has talent, even though they are banged up. Tyler O'Neill on the injured list, Jordan Westberg on the injured list, Colton Cowser on the injured list. But you still have talent here, especially at the top. Mullins, Henderson, Rutschman, O'Hearn, 1 through 4. And you have a lot of guys that have been unlucky as well. Adley Rutschman has hit the ball much better than his stats suggest in terms of quality of contact. Cedric Mullins' actual numbers are better than his expected numbers, but he's been fantastic so far this year. Gunnar, we know the upside he has. Ryan O'Hearn's been great. And then you just get really, really cheap bats that still have underlying talent with Mountcastle, Holiday, Kjerstad, Mayo, Carlson. So far, though, the bottom of this order, based on what we've seen, actual major league production, the bottom of this order should mean strikeouts for Pablo Lopez. They all have prospect status. They all have the ability to hit, but most of them do strike out a lot and haven't necessarily been great major league hitters yet. 9K for Pablo Lopez, 16% ownership. I'm getting the 15%. I'm perfectly fine with that. He's a good pitcher overall, 25% K percentage, 3.33 xFIP since last year. If he can just kind of navigate his way through the top part of the order, he should be able to rack up some strikeouts against the bottom. So I think he is a pretty high upside option. Offensively, I am getting to this game as well. Minnesota is relatively popular, and I am getting there. But starting with the Orioles side, they are not popular at all. And I get it because they are facing a good pitcher in Lopez. But you have 3% or less ownership coming into every hitter on this team. Even if you want to call that, say, 5%, that's pretty low for a team that just has the offensive upside the Orioles do, given that they have a lot of power, but also stolen base upside in this lineup. So I'm getting to 11% Gunnar Henderson at 3% owned, 7% Mullins, 6% Rutschman. These guys at the top of the order that are good. And then I'm using the value bats to just kind of fill stacks out. Jackson Holiday, Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad, all at like 2 to 3%. I do wish I was getting a bit more Ryan O'Hearn, first base and outfield eligible at 4,500. I never seem to really get to him, which sucks. But he's been really good. He has power. I'm still not getting much. But I do think the Orioles are a decent contrarian stack here. Depending on which guys you get to, they can be essentially free as well. Lopez, going back to last year, only a 146 expected ISO to righties, 150 to lefties. So far this year, only 216 pitches thrown to lefties. He has allowed a 206 expected ISO. So most likely he just reverts back to being a good pitcher sooner than later. But if you want to play that angle, like there is no shortage of left-handed power in this Orioles lineup. Now, getting to the more likely to succeed side, the Twins with about a 4.8 implied run total here. And this is a popular team I'm getting to. We talked about Kansas City where they're popular and I'm not getting much. Minnesota's popular and I'm with it. Byron Buxton, 12% projected ownership. I'm getting 19%. 11% projected ownership to a $3,700 Ryan Jeffers, batting second at a weak catcher position. I'm right around the field there. Slightly north on 9% Carlos Correa with 10%. He's somehow only 3,200 batting cleanup. This is another spot where I don't care what Carlos Correa's numbers are for the season. He's $3,200 batting cleanup on a team with a near 5 implied run total. Ty France has the platoon advantage in 9% of my lineups at 3,500 batting third. Brooks Lee is cheap batting sixth at 2,900. Royce Lewis is back for a couple of games before he gets hurt again. He is getting 6% ownership. I'm actually not getting much of him, which sucks. I would love to get more. He's great when he's in the lineup. But Buxton, Jeffers, Correa, France, Lee, the guys I'm getting the most of. If I could get some more Royce Lewis, I would love that. So I have, kind of both sides of it here with Povich and the Twins. The Twins are the side that certainly has the better chance of success. Pirates taking on the Cards in St. Louis. Low total in this one, about a 3.5 implied run total for the Cardinals. 3.5 to 4 for the Pirates. Paul Skeens is going for the Pirates. Matthew Liberatore is going for the Cards. $10,000 price tag on Skeens, $8,200 on Liberatore. Liberatore is getting 10% ownership. I'm not getting to him at 8,200, but I don't hate it. He has actually shown some signs of improvement this year. He's tied with Michael King for the biggest jump in Stuff Plus of anybody pitching today, going from 96.6 last year to 102.4 this year. Strikeout percentage is up slightly from 21.9% to 22.6. Fastball velo is up half a mile per hour from 93.8 to 94.3. He gets a pretty solid matchup against the Pirates, albeit against a lot of right-handed hitters. So I don't have it, but I certainly wouldn't fault anybody for going there. And then Paul Skeens getting 18% ownership at 10K. I don't have this one either. very obviously wouldn't fault anyone for going there, but the writing was kind of on the wall when I'm over the field on Wheeler, I'm over the field on Sale, I'm over the field on King, I'm even with the field on Lopez, kind of just running out of expensive pitching slots for Paul Skeens. The things that I do like are it's Paul Skeens, and obviously he's really, really good. The concerns I have, the things I don't like are he is not getting strikeouts this year. He struck out 33% of hitters so far last season, 42 and 2/3 innings pitched so far this year. He's only struck out 24.8% of hitters. Fastball velo's down slightly from 98.8 miles an hour to 98. His stuff plus is actually up slightly from 108.5 to 109.1. Most likely the truth is just somewhere in the middle. He wasn't going to sustain a 33% strikeout percentage. Most people don't. He's also probably not going to maintain a sub 25% strikeout percentage. He's too good for that. So it's probably, you're going to get somewhere in that upper 20s range. But this is also a pretty tough strikeout matchup against the Cards. 18.2% strikeout percentage is tied with San Diego for the second lowest against right-handed pitching so far this season. The only team that has struck out less against right-handed pitching so far is Kansas City. And you're not really getting a salary discount on Paul Skeens. This isn't like with Chris Sale, where it's like, oh, well, he's dropped off, he's quote unquote dropped off in terms of his run prevention, so we're going to knock his price down. Or the pitching equation of like Pasquantino, where suddenly Paul Skeens is getting priced like a 25% strikeout pitcher when we know he's better. He's still being priced like a 30+% guy in a tough strikeout matchup, and the ownership hasn't really dropped. Like, sure, you could argue that if this were Paul Skeens of last year, he'd be maybe 25-30%, but he's still getting 15 to 20% ownership at a 10K price tag. If you want to play Paul Skeens, fine. If you just want to play a little bit less Sale than I am, a little bit less Wheeler, you want to play him instead of King, like any of that clearly is perfectly fine. He's a very good pitcher. You have to keep in mind that when I'm talking about my player exposures here, that generally isn't going to mean I don't like Paul Skeens. Like I didn't like click anything to say, give me less Paul Skeens. It's just how he shook out using our projections and the way that we have Wheeler, King, and Sale projected relative to Skeens, along with his ownership and salary. So he's kind of just the odd man out for me. Not saying that's the right answer, just the one that I have right now. Offensively, I would not expect to be getting to too much of this game, but I am actually getting to the Pirates. Thankfully, I'm not getting to the Cards, but there is no ownership coming into Pittsburgh here. And I mentioned that Liberatore has looked better so far this season, has shown some signs of improvement. Righties only have a 138 expected ISO against them so far this year. But if you go back to last year, a 190 actual ISO, 171 expected ISO. And this is just a really, really cheap Pirates team that does have some power upside. They don't have like true home run hitters, but they're cheap. They have some power upside. One thing, and we have it right. So there is some big pinch hit risk on some of these guys too. So I am getting the 14% Matt Gorski. I would like to walk that back a bit because, again, he's just super likely to get pinch hit for. I'm getting to 12% Canario. Again, super likely to be pinch hit for, but he's batting fifth. So you get some value here in the middle of the order with Gorski hitting sixth, Canario hitting fifth. The hope would be that the Pirates just throw up 6-7 runs early on Liberatore and then don't care to pinch hit later in the game. But it is likely those guys get pinch hit for. I am probably going to do something to just like manually get less of them, because I'm assuming what is happening here is you can see that we have a very high pinch hit percentage and that goes into their fantasy points. But then I'm using SaberSim to create my lineups. And this is something that you have to keep in mind if you're using publicly available sims, any tool that you didn't build yourself, you have to keep in mind how stuff works. If on the back end, when SaberSim runs their sims, I have no idea how they're handling pinch hit risk. My assumption is that they are not having these guys pinch hit for as often as our back end sim that creates the projections is. And so it's artificially bumping those guys up. So that's why I have more of them than I would like right now. I will probably walk them back a bit. But I am getting to 12% to Brian Hayes as well, 5% McCutchen, 8% Reynolds. Those guys don't have pinch hit risk. They are cheap. I don't mind getting to them. So kind of like the Pirates, don't like them as much as my exposures at the moment would suggest. Toronto taking on the Angels in Anaheim. And now we're getting to offenses that I am interested in. Jose Urena getting the start for the Blue Jays. 2025, this dude is still in the major leagues. He made a relief appearance for the Mets earlier this year. Now he's getting a start for the Blue Jays. Tyler Anderson is getting the start for the Angels. I do not have interest in pitching here. Nobody has interest in pitching here. Brutal strikeout matchup for Anderson at 7,700. Urania, just not a good strikeout pitcher and a tough park to pitch in. I like the offenses a lot. And somehow there is not a lot of ownership coming into this game, which is making me like it even more. Vlad Guerrero is the highest projected ownership for the Blue Jays at 6% right now. 5,300 at first base. Sure, he's relatively expensive. Sure, there is opportunity cost at first base, but Vlad Guerrero in this park, I like it a lot. The one negative, I guess, for Toronto is Tyler Anderson is a reverse splits guy. He has a good changeup. He's thrown it to right-handed hitters 45% of the time since the start of last season. He's held righties to a respectable 159 expected ISO since last year, 167 so far this year. He gives up a ton of power to lefties, but the Blue Jays, A, don't have lefties, and B, Andres Gimenez can't hit left-handed pitching for shit. I think you can still play him, especially in stacks, but that's the negative here is that it's a right-handed heavy lineup, and Anderson is reverse splits. But this is still a very good park for home runs, and it's very good right-handed hitters. Vladimir Guerrero, Anthony Santander getting 5% ownership. I have 17%. Santander, my second highest owned bat from the Blue Jays. Ernie Clement, actually, as a value play, is my highest owned bat in 23% of my lineups. This is just, a value spot that lets me get some good pitching around these stacks. But getting above the field on Santander, Guerrero, Bichette, Alejandro Kirk getting 3% ownership at 3,200. Even if you want to call that 5%, that's pretty cheap for a $3,200 catcher. I like Jimenez as part of stacks. Again, he hasn't hit left-handed pitching well at all, but Anderson also gives up a ton of power, so one of those sides has to win out. George Springer is hitting like it's 3 years ago. He seems to be fully healthy and raking so far this season. He is getting no ownership at 4,700. I'm getting 13% of him. 5% Dalton Varsho is my lowest owned guy on the Blue Jays. That's still like 2x the field. So maybe ownership ends up coming in higher. I don't know, but this team, I think, in this park should be a lot more popular, and they're not even really that expensive. The only guy above 4,700 is $5,300 Vlad. If you go and look at what these guys have done against left-handed pitching over the last few seasons, Bo Bichette, 206 expected ISO and 197 plate appearances. Guerrero, 195. Santander, 203. Springer, 171. But keep in mind, you're talking about 2 seasons where he wasn't as good as he has been so far this year. Only 128 for Kirk, but he's really cheap. Only 120 for Clement, but again, really cheap. So, especially the main guys here, Santander, Guerrero, Bichette, I really like them. I really like Springer. On the other side for the Angels, facing Jose Urena, last year with Texas, Urena actually did do a pretty good job. Not even pretty good. He did a good job of limiting right-handed power in particular. 132 expected ISO allowed, but he didn't get strikeouts, only 15%. Lefties did damage, 191 expected ISO, 15.5% strikeout percentage. If you go back to 2023, though, that expected ISO for righties jumps to 180, and it's pretty much in line with the expected ISO to lefties. So you run into a similar issue with the Angels that you do with the Blue Jays, where maybe Jose Urena is okay against righties and really bad against lefties, but the Angels just don't have lefties outside of Rengifo and Shanwell. But I just don't really think Jose Urena is likely to be that good against righties either. The Angels are extremely affordable. The only hitter in this lineup above $4,300 is Zach Neto at 43, or above 4K is Zach Neto at 4,300, most likely leading off. Taylor Ward is 3,300. Soler is 3,500 against a guy that doesn't miss bats. You're going to let Jorge Soler put the ball in play. He's going to hit it hard, most likely. Kyron Paris can hit the ball hard. He's 3,500 with MPE. Joe Adell is like a poor man's version of Jorge Soler. Rengifo and Ohapi both look pretty good. So I'm not getting a ton of the Angels. I thought that I would actually be getting a little bit more, but I am getting in particular a lot of Zach Neto, a lot of Taylor Ward, and then I'm right around the field on most of the other guys. So I am more overweight to the Blue Jays, but individually I like Neto, I like Ward a lot, and I'm certainly fine with getting to more of those other Angels bats. Another interesting game offensively, Mets taking on the Diamondbacks in Arizona. 2 solid pitchers on the mound, but a game with a very high total. We have 10 listed. I thought it was 9.5, but either way, 9.5, 10 for a game between Zach Gallen and David Peterson is something that stands out. And it's kind of similar to how I felt about the A's yesterday. with like a 4.5 plus implied run total against Bryce Miller. It's the same kind of thing here. So starting with the pitching, Zach Gallen is getting 5% ownership. David Peterson's getting 3%. I'm not getting to either one. Neither of these matchups is very good. Both teams are tough to strike out. Both teams have a lot of good hitters. The pitchers are good themselves, but I'm moving on from that one. Offensively, though, the Mets are all projected for sub 10% ownership on DraftKings. Juan Soto leading the way, 9% owned. Juan Soto hasn't been very good from a fantasy standpoint so far this year, but everything points to him getting better, and his price tag is dropping. He has the lowest, his actual WOBA this year is like the lowest, I believe, of his career. But his expected ISO, and I'm double checking all of this now while I talk, his expected ISO would be better than it was in 2023 or 2022. His actual WOBA, 362, obviously still good, but would be the worst of his entire career. But he has a 422 expected WOBA. That is not as good as last year when it was 462, but it's better than 2023. It's better than 2022. It's better than his 2019 season with the Nats. So you're expecting a ton of positive regression there for Soto. His salary is down to $5K. This is one of the cheapest price tags you're going to get for Soto. Zach Gallen, again, you're not looking at this because it's a great matchup. He has about a 155 expected ISO allowed to both sides of the plate, but Soto is cheap. Alonso getting 6% ownership. I'm getting to 15%. Lindor's getting 6%. I'm getting to 12. Vientos getting 5%. I'm getting to 16. Brandon Nimmo is neck and neck with Juan Soto for most unlucky hitter on the Mets so far this year. I'm 2x the field on him, getting to 10%. 7% McNeil, 7% Taylor, 8% Alvarez. I'm just getting 2 to 3x the field on the Mets across the board here. It really stands out that the total on this game is as high as it is. The implied run total for the Mets is as high as it is. You don't want to just look at totals and team totals in a vacuum and say, 4.6 equals 4.6 equals 4.6. If you have a team that is always 3 and then today they're 4.6, you should look at that and go, holy shit, that is really high. Whereas if you have a team in cores and they're 4.6, it's worse than the team that is always 3 and is 4.6, as an extreme example. So it really stands out how high the totals are for both of these teams. Looking at the Arizona side against Peterson, 9% ownership coming into Ketel Marte. That is the high mark for Arizona bats. I am perfectly fine with that. I'm getting to 11% of him. David Peterson, since the start of last season, has allowed only a 143 expected ISO to righties, 111 to lefties, 29% K percentage to lefties, only 17% to righties. But you have right-handed power bats in this Arizona lineup. 228 expected ISO against left-handed pitching since the start of 2023 for Ketel Marte. Eugenio Suarez at 203. Randall Grichuk with pinch hit risk, but he's cheap. 217 expected ISO. So those three guys, stand out. Lourdes Gurriel, 196 as well. Obviously a stacked outfield spot, but there's a lot of right-handed power here. Marte looks good. Grichuk, I think at 2,600 again, has pinch hit risk, but he's only 2,600 as a value piece. I think he's fine. Suarez, if you can get to him at 4,300, looks good. Gurriel, I'm getting to at only $3,400. I'm getting a little bit of Carroll and Naylor, but primarily getting to Gurriel, Grichuk, and Ketel Marte, and then a little bit of the rest of the Diamondbacks. Suarez would be the one guy that I would throw in there that I would like more. And then finally wrapping this one up with another game that has a high total. Seattle taking on the A's in Sacramento. Again, a high total on this game. Worse pitching than we had yesterday. Yesterday was Severino versus Miller. Today is Emerson Hancock against Jeffrey Springs. Jeffrey Springs, this is another change from the article this morning. He was randomly getting a ton of ownership. Now he's only projected for about 3%. I have 6%. He's 7,600. He's talented. He has a good changeup. He can get right-handed hitters out. But this park, at worst, is probably average for hitting, and most likely it's above average. So it's at, there's no way it's not a big park upgrade for these Mariners bats. If you want to roll the dice on a little bit of Springs and just hope it goes well, fine. I don't really have any interest in getting to Hancock. For the bats, though, there is probably going to be ownership here. I can't see it because screen froze again. But I'm getting to this game also. Not getting to it as aggressively as I did yesterday, thank God. But 17% projected ownership coming in to Dylan Moore leads the way for the Mariners. That is tied with Julio Rodriguez. Randy Arozarena, hamstring injury, day to day, may or may not be in the lineup. Right now, projected for 14% ownership, but I didn't project him in. So that is obviously wonky. Cal Raleigh getting 11% ownership, Mitch Garver getting 10%, everybody else sub 10%. The Mariners look good. I am around the field on Rodriguez and Raleigh. I'm around the field on Garver. I'm not getting to as much Dylan Moore, who's getting a ton of ownership. I get it. He has stolen base upside. He has power upside. I just don't have quite as much as the field. One thing that I do think is really interesting, though, and that I do want to point out, Jeffrey Springs has allowed 12 stolen bases in like 34 innings pitched this year. That is unbelievably bad. And Shea Langoliers has, every season of his career, been above average at throwing out potential base stealers. This year, he's allowed like 38 stolen bases and thrown out 5 guys or something like that. So I don't know what's really going on, but Langoliers suddenly can't throw, and Jeffrey Springs just doesn't seem to give a shit about anybody on base. He's willing to just let them walk to the next one. So this is a Mariners team where pretty much everybody has stolen base upside. Cal Raleigh has stolen base upside. Dylan Moore, Rodriguez, Arozarena, if he's in the lineup, Crawford, obviously. Like, these guys all have stolen base upside. So I do actually wish I were getting more Seattle. I think there's a lot of ways for them to get there. But, you know, they are really popular for good reason, I think. On the other side, for the A's, going up against Hancock. Hancock is a pitcher that does not miss a lot of bats. He has historically been a reverse splits guy. I still think you can play Lawrence Butler. You can play Tyler Soderstrom. They are still my 2 highest owned guys from the A's. 4,900 for Butler, 4,800 for Soderstrom. But it is interesting that Hancock has given up more power to right-handed hitters. That would point you in the direction of Brent Rooker and Shea Langoliers. I'm around the field on those guys, but I did want to mention, you know, the reverse splits there. I do think it's an interesting point. So that wraps up this one. That is every game on the slate. Going to go through quickly and recap everything that I'm getting to. Highest owned pitchers: Chris Sale, Zach Wheeler, Michael King, Pablo Lopez. Highest owned catchers: Alejandro Kirk, Cal Raleigh, Ryan Jeffers. First base: Vlad Guerrero, Pete Alonso, Christian Walker. Second base: Andres Jimenez, probably in stacks. Ozzie Albies, Ketel Marte. Third base: Ernie Clement, again, probably in stacks. Mark Vientos, Austin Riley. Shortstop: Zach Neto, Jeremy Pena, Bo Bichette, Francisco Lindor. And in the outfield: Juan Soto, Julio Rodriguez, Byron Buxton, Anthony Santander, Taylor Ward for value. Highest owned stacks right now in terms of all stack types: Blue Jays, Mets, Angels, Twins, Mariners. Highest owned 5-mans: Blue Jays, Mets, Astros, Pirates, which I think comes down, Angels, and Diamondbacks. That wraps this one up. Thank you for checking out the show. Don't forget to subscribe to Run the Sims. Use our projections. Use promo code UTA MLB. Get 10% off. Keep an eye out for the deep dive article coming out on weekdays now, and I'll see you back here again tomorrow.